Do you think you're dead at that point when you take 9 bullets? Do you go, oh, this is it, I'm checking out?
Well, it's a life-threatening situation.
On May 24th, 2000, somebody tried to erase 50 Cent from South Jamaica, Queens. And for over 20 years, the story froze right there. But now, the man connected to that hit is talking in court, and the claims he's making point straight toward Jay-Z, shaking the whole timeline up. This isn't the version people thought they knew, not even close. Here's how it really went down. 9 shots rang out in South Jamaica, Queens on May 24th, 2000. Curtis Jackson, just 24 years old at the time, was sitting in a friend's car outside his grandmother's house on 161st Street. His young son was inside the home, his grandmother was right there in the yard, and everything felt routine. Until it didn't. Curtis had just grabbed some jewelry and was about to pull off. Then a man walked straight up to the car and opened fire, unleashing 9 rounds from a 9mm at point-blank range. Bullets tore through Curtis's hand, arm, hip, both legs, chest, and even his left cheek. One shot ripped through his face, shattered a wisdom tooth, and left his tongue swollen so bad it nearly cost him his voice. The friend riding with him caught a bullet in the hand, too. Curtis spent 13 brutal days in the hospital, needed a walker for 6 weeks, and it took 5 long months just to feel normal again. That bullet through his cheek left a slight slur, a scar that later became part of his unmistakable sound as 50 Cent. Years later, in a 2013 interview, 50 explained what led up to the shooting and addressed the question everyone keeps asking, why would someone put money on his life? And what he revealed about that contract makes this whole story way darker than people ever realized.
Paid to do it.
Yeah, he was paid because someone, felt like that I would potentially do something to them if they kept going in the direction that they were going.
But this wasn't just street tension, this was business. And it all started with a song. Before the shooting, 50 Cent recorded a track called Ghetto Koran, and that record crossed lines you're never supposed to cross. The song straight up named real drug dealers and kingpins from Queens, including Kenneth Supreme McGriff, his nephew Gerald Prince Miller, plus names like Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols and Howard Pappy Mason. The lyrics laid out their drug operations from the 1980s in detail. In the streets, that's a major violation. You don't put real names on wax, and you definitely don't document criminal empires in a song like it's a case file. That move alone sent shockwaves through the underworld. McGriff, who once ran the Supreme Team during the crack era and had been paroled in 1995 after a narcotics conspiracy conviction, allegedly saw the song as a direct threat to his freedom and power. Federal documents later claim McGriff put a $25,000 hit on 50 Cent's head as payback for that record. The man accused of pulling the trigger was Daryl Homo Baum, a feared figure from Brooklyn's Lafayette Gardens projects. His nickname, short for homicide, came from violent robberies as a teenager, and he walked with a limp from an old injury. Even at 5'7", people knew not to play with him. Baum had crossed paths with Mike Tyson in juvenile detention, and after doing nearly a decade in prison, got out in 1999. Tyson allegedly helped him with money, a car, a Rolex, and even work as a bodyguard. But the streets kept calling, and Baum drifted back in, linking up with the Peanut Crew and reconnecting with McGriff's network fast. Authorities later claimed Kenneth Supreme McGriff hired Daryl Homo Baum to handle the hit on 50 Cent, all as payback for those expose-style lyrics. And 50 didn't duck the truth either. He put Baum's name straight into his music. On Many Men, Wish Death, from his 2003 album Get Rich or Die Trying, he rapped, "Homo shot me, 3 weeks later he got shot down." That wasn't metaphor, that was real life. On June 10th, 2000, just 3 weeks after the ambush, Baum was killed. He was shot in the back of the head at Quincy Street and Marcy Avenue in Brooklyn during a heated gang turf clash. Investigators named Aaron E. Money Granton as the shooter, tied to an ongoing war between the Peanut Crew and the Cash Money brothers. The streets were already boiling, and this just poured gas on it.
How bad is it to get shot in the face?
Probably, I don't know how to describe that outside of...
Is it a 10 on the pain scale?
It's not really because it's not as painful as having to visit the dentist repeatedly for root canal.
The fallout didn't stop there. Mike Tyson was reportedly crushed by Baum's death. After his June 24, 2000 win over Lou Savarese, Tyson dedicated the victory to Baum and was rumored to have offered $50,000 for retaliation. That's how deep the emotions ran. Meanwhile, the industry turned its back on 50. Columbia Records dropped him and shelved his debut album, Power of the Dollar. He was iced out, blacklisted, written off. But that same violence built the legend. Surviving 9 shots became the core of his image when he finally exploded in 2003 with Eminem and Dr. Dre. When asked about the pain of being shot in the face, 50's response showed how battle-tested he really was. And to this day, the case is officially unsolved. He stuck to the street code, refused to cooperate, and wouldn't pursue charges since Baum was already gone. Prosecutors whispered that blaming a dead man was convenient, but the real question, who truly ordered the hit, kept echoing through federal courtrooms for years. The Supreme Team connection explains why someone wanted 50 Cent taken out. To understand that motive, you have to understand Kenneth Supreme McGriff and the empire he built in Queens during the 1980s crack era. The Supreme Team wasn't just another drug crew. It was a structured criminal enterprise that controlled large parts of Queens' drug trade and stacked serious money through intimidation, violence, and tight organization. McGriff ran things with discipline, while his nephew Gerald Prince Miller handled much of the street-level distribution. Together, they built a cocaine and crack network that brought in millions and ruled entire neighborhoods. Their rise happened at the same time hip-hop was taking shape in New York. The influence was direct. The cars, the jewelry, the image that later showed up in rap videos didn't come out of nowhere. A lot of that lifestyle was modeled after real figures like McGriff. Kids in the projects saw these men every day. Some feared them, others admired them. Most felt both. 50 Cent was one of those kids growing up in South Jamaica. He later admitted he once looked up to McGriff and the Supreme Team. In a 2006 interview, 50 explained that as a young hustler, these were the men who represented power, money, and respect on the block. That image meant everything to a kid trying to survive. But admiration never meant loyalty. McGriff was convicted on a drug conspiracy charge in 1987 and paroled in 1995. When he came home, the streets had changed. His ambition hadn't. That's when he started shifting toward the entertainment world, setting off a chain of events that would collide with 50's rise. Seeing a way to clean up his money without cutting off his street ties, McGriff made a move into music by aligning himself with Irv Gotti and Murder Inc. Records, the powerhouse label behind stars like Ja Rule and Ashanti. This is where everything starts lining up. At the turn of the millennium, Murder Inc. was one of the hottest labels in hip-hop, and the money was flowing heavy. Ja Rule was everywhere. Hits on repeat, charts locked up, and the label was printing cash. Behind the scenes, though, federal prosecutors would later allege that McGriff was providing street protection for Murder Inc., acting as muscle and making sure nobody crossed the label or its artists. According to investigators, that relationship allegedly ran deeper, with claims that the label helped launder McGriff's drug money in exchange for protection. 50 Cent's beef with Ja Rule didn't start after the shooting, it started before it. Back in 1999, one of 50's associates snatched Ja Rule's chain, leading to confrontations and police involvement. Things escalated fast, spilling into physical fights, and even a 2000 stabbing at a New York recording studio. This wasn't rap drama for promo, it was personal, loud, and violent. So when Ghetto Quran leaked, it wasn't just disrespect toward McGriff. It was viewed as a threat to the entire Murder Inc.'s operation. If 50 was naming real street figures on records, what else might he expose? What did he really know about the overlap between the streets and the music business? The 2003 federal investigation into Murder Inc. pulled that curtain back. An IRS affidavit from Agent Francis Mace described McGriff allegedly tracking 50's movements through pager messages. Intercepted communications showed Murder Inc. employees, including Christopher Lorenzo, Irv Gotti's brother, allegedly passing along 50 Cent's locations to McGriff. That's when this story stopped looking like rap beef and started looking like something much darker. Federal investigators believed the shooting wasn't a one-off moment of street violence. They viewed it as part of a broader effort to silence 50 Cent, tied to deeper industry and street tensions. As the case widened, authorities even examined possible connections to the 2002 murder of Jam Master Jay of Run DMC. Investigators suggested the motive may have involved Jay defying an alleged industry freeze by working with 50, a move some believe crossed the wrong people. That expanding probe led to the high-profile 2003 federal raid on Murder Inc. records. 2 years later, in 2005, the Lorenzo brothers were put on trial, facing money laundering charges connected to Kenneth Supreme McGriff's drug proceeds. They were ultimately acquitted, but the courtroom testimony peeled back layers of how tightly street figures and the music business were intertwined. McGriff himself was never charged in connection with the attempt on 50 Cent's life. His legal team argued the claims were unsupported, and over time, those allegations faded from official filings. Still, his story didn't end there. In 2007, McGriff was sentenced to life in prison on unrelated murder-for-hire convictions and drug charges, many tied to crimes directed from behind bars. Even years later, McGriff continued to deny any role in the 50 Cent shooting. In 2025, his son spoke publicly, brushing off the claims as exaggerated for attention and framing the conflict as neighborhood jealousy, not a coordinated hit. 50 Cent's own view surfaced in a 2006 interview where he reflected on how the clash around Murder, Inc. spiraled far beyond music, showing just how dangerous those industry alliances could become. 50 Cent later explained that McGriff tried to step in and mediate his feud with Ja Rule and Irv Gotti, not out of peace, but because he viewed them as his financial interests. From McGriff's perspective, the conflict threatened business. From 50's side, backing down was never an option. As he put it at the time, someone would have to kill me to stop me from doing what I want to do. And not long after, someone clearly tried. The man accused of pulling the trigger, Daryl Homo Baum, lived a life that felt pulled straight from a crime series. Born in the early 1970s in Brooklyn, Baum grew up in the Lafayette Gardens housing projects, where violence wasn't shocking, it was survival. Reputation mattered, and fear was currency. By his teenage years, Baum had earned a nickname that followed him for life. Homo, short for homicide, came from his reputation for brutal robberies. He would knock victims unconscious and rob them in project hallways and stairwells. Despite standing around 5'7" and walking with a limp from an old injury, he was widely feared. Size didn't matter when you struck first and struck hard. Baum's life took an unexpected turn in juvenile detention where he met a young Mike Tyson. The two bonded quickly. Both were products of Brooklyn's harsh streets, both understood violence early, and both recognized something familiar in each other. Baum later served nearly a decade in prison on charges that were never fully detailed publicly. When he was released in 1999, Tyson was there. By then, one of the most famous athletes in the world, Tyson brought Baum into his inner circle, giving him money, a car, a Rolex, and work as a bodyguard. Baum traveled with him, including during the build-up to the Lou Savarese fight in June 2000. Still, even with legitimate work and celebrity access, the streets never fully let Baum go. Baum slowly drifted back into the same criminal networks that had shaped his life. He reconnected with the Peanut Crew, a Brooklyn-based gang led by Ivory Peanut Davis and James Jr. Hamilton. Even while staying at Mike Tyson's mansion in Connecticut, Baum allegedly kept one foot in the streets, pressuring drug dealers and maintaining his reputation through intimidation and violence. That path eventually brought him back into orbit with Kenneth Supreme McGriff. Through shared connections, McGriff was reportedly looking for someone dependable for a sensitive task. Baum had the reputation, the experience, and the willingness, according to multiple sources. Investigators later alleged that McGriff chose Baum to deal with the situation involving 50 Cent. On the morning of May 24, 2000, Baum allegedly traveled from Brooklyn to South Jamaica, Queens. He approached the parked car where 50 was sitting outside his grandmother's home and fired 9 shots through the window before leaving the scene, believing the job was done. 17 days later, Baum was dead. On June 10, 2000, he was shot in the back of the head at the corner of Quincy Street and Marcy Avenue in Brooklyn. Police said the killing was part of an ongoing gang conflict. The shooter was identified as Aaron E. Money Granton, who was associated with the Cash Money Brothers, rivals of the Peanut Crew. Speculation followed fast. Some believe Baum's killing was retaliation connected to the 50 Cent shooting, possibly arranged by someone tied to the rapper. Others argued it had nothing to do with that incident at all, just another chapter in Brooklyn's long cycle of gang violence. What's clear is that Baum's death didn't end the bloodshed. It triggered a chain reaction. Ivory Peanut Davis was killed in August 2000. James Jr. Hamilton followed in August 2001. Baum's own brother, Tyrone Tack Baum, was killed in 2002. In the streets, debts rarely come with receipts, and consequences often ripple long after the original spark is gone. The wave of violence was eventually linked to Damian World Hardy, who was convicted in 2015 for multiple murders, including the killings tied to Baum's crew. The losses hit hard, especially for Mike Tyson. Just 2 weeks after Baum's death, Tyson entered the ring against Lou Savarese in Glasgow, Scotland. The fight ended in just 38 seconds. After the knockout, Tyson grabbed the microphone and dedicated the win to his fallen friend. "I dedicate this fight to my brother Darryl Baum. Someone killed him and I haven't gotten over it yet," Tyson said at the time. Soon after, reports surfaced claiming Tyson had offered $50,000 to anyone willing to retaliate against members of the rival gang blamed for Baum's death. Whether that money was ever claimed has become part of Brooklyn street lore. At the same time, questions about whether Baum was truly the shooter never fully went away. Testimony during the 2005 Murder, Inc. trial complicated the story. A witness named John Regan, who described himself as a pimp, testified that Kenneth Supreme McGriff had bragged about the shooting, saying, "I got him," believing 50 Cent was dead. Reagan claimed McGriff identified the shooter as someone he called Son, not Baum, and described how the gunman allegedly cleaned gunshot residue using rubbing alcohol. Prosecutors later suggested that blaming a dead man was convenient. Naming Baum publicly meant avoiding pointing fingers at anyone still alive and potentially dangerous. Street stories offered other names, including a shooter known as Son from the Pink Houses or a Supreme Team affiliate called God. The truth remains disputed. What isn't disputed is the outcome. 9 bullets were fired into 50 Cent. He lived. The man most often blamed for pulling the trigger died weeks later. That survival and everything surrounding it became the foundation of one of hip-hop's most powerful origin stories. The Jay-Z connection is where speculation has lived for years. So how does any of this connect back to Jay-Z? There's no single smoking gun, but several overlapping threads. None are conclusive on their own. Together, they've kept theories alive for more than 2 decades. The first thread runs through Murder, Inc. Irv Gotti was a longtime Jay-Z associate before launching Murder, Inc. Records. Before that, Gotti worked closely with Jay-Z on production and beats. When Kenneth Supreme McGriff began moving into the music business, it was Gotti who introduced him to Jay-Z. By most accounts, that introduction wasn't dark or secretive. Jay-Z and Gotti were both attempting to steer McGriff toward legitimate ventures. Jay-Z has referenced that dynamic in his lyrics over the years. On Put On Remix, he rapped about trying to guide McGriff away from the streets and predicting where that road would lead. He echoed similar themes on Talk Up, positioning himself as someone who tried to help while contrasting his own success with McGriff's eventual life sentence.
Think he knew anything? He's seemingly around Diddy a
I
lot.
don't know. That was a real suburb question.
Yeah, I know, right? Proximity.
And the proximity.
Proximity. That's the SAT hit parade word. I had to learn
Proximity of
that.
Jim. Do you think he knew all of the shit that was going on? Then I was like a.
I don't want to incriminate myself.
I know, but the way he said it.
Like I said,
No matter how you answer that, you snitching.
Those efforts weren't just lyrical. Jay-Z and Gotti helped finance McGriff's 2003 film Crime Partners, an adaptation of Donald Goines' novel, as part of an attempt to transition him into entertainment. The project didn't change McGriff's fate, but it showed there was a real push toward legitimacy. Running parallel to all of this was a completely separate issue, the Jay-Z and 50 Cent tension. That friction dates back to 1999 when 50 released How to Rob, a satirical track imagining robberies of famous rappers. Jay-Z was one of the names mentioned, with lines about robbing him and taking his jewelry. It was meant as humor, but not everyone took it that way. And that moment quietly planted the seed for a rivalry that would grow alongside everything else unfolding behind the scenes. Jay-Z responded publicly at Summer Jam in 1999 in front of roughly 30,000 fans. During his set, he took a sharp shot, rapping a line questioning why anyone would challenge him and downplaying the name 50 Cent. The moment landed loud, and the timing mattered. Summer Jam happened before the shooting, but Jay-Z later repeated the line on his 1999 album Vol. 3, Life and Times of S. Carter, keeping the reference alive. Some critics have pointed out that Jay-Z continued to allude to 50 during the period when 50 Cent was recovering from nearly fatal gunshot wounds. To them, it looked opportunistic at best. Years later, 50 made it clear how he would have reacted if Jay-Z had openly sided with his enemies. The implication was heavy. According to 50, Jay-Z staying neutral during the most intense phase of the Murder, Inc. conflict likely kept him out of direct danger. Their rivalry didn't disappear. Throughout the 2000s, it played out through sales battles, diss records, and constant comparisons. In 2003, they even co-headlined the Rock the Mic tour and exchanged respectful comments in interviews. 50 once called Jay-Z the better MC based on seniority, while Jay-Z predicted 50 could become one of the greatest. The respect was real, but competition never left the room. Things heated up again in 2007 during the high-profile sales showdown between 50's Curtis and Kanye West's Graduation. 50 later accused Jay-Z, then president of Def Jam, of manipulating promotion to favor Kanye. Graduation won, and 50 never dropped the issue. By December 2025, amid renewed industry scandals, speculation around Jay-Z's alleged connection to the 50 Cent shooting flared up again. Viral videos claimed new evidence, and while nothing was proven, 50 helped amplify the conversation, keeping a decades-old question alive. In recent years, 50 Cent has leaned into trolling. He's posted AI-generated clips and memes mocking Jay-Z, questioned whether the Super Bowl halftime show would move forward because of Jay-Z's Rock Nation role, and stirred conversation without ever crossing a legal line. When asked directly about Jay-Z's proximity to powerful figures facing legal trouble, 50's responses were careful, indirect, and loaded with implication. That's a tactic 50 has mastered. He avoids outright accusations while keeping speculation alive, letting the audience fill in the gaps. It keeps the narrative moving without opening the door to lawsuits. The most extreme claims haven't come from 50 himself, but from others circling the story. One of the loudest voices was a former bodyguard known as Uncle Ron, who posted TikTok videos before his death in September 2024. He alleged that Jay-Z and a bad boy mogul were involved in the 1997 murder of the notorious B.I.G., claiming money was offered to carry out the hit. Uncle Ron died from reported pneumonia shortly after the videos went viral, which only fueled online theories. No evidence has ever supported his claims. Another former bodyguard, Gene Deal, publicly debunked the story, saying Uncle Ron wasn't part of the core security circle and was chasing attention. McGriff's son has also dismissed stories tying his father and Jay-Z together as exaggerated and driven by rumor. What matters most is this: 50 Cent has never directly accused Jay-Z of involvement in the May 24, 2000 shooting. His own words have consistently pointed toward McGriff, Murder Inc., and the J. Rule conflict. The Jay-Z insinuations belong to a long-running rivalry, not the night that nearly ended 50's life. That shooting was supposed to end his career before it began. Instead, it turned him into a legend. If you made it this far, drop your thoughts in the comments, like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you in the next one.